knew those police in and around us. And then when I seen them blue lights in my rearview mirror, my stomach just went and I just knew it was over. I've ended up walking into a surveillance operation. I was arrested. I had 35 kilos of MDMA in the boot of the car. My childhood, very early on, I was a happy kid, dead placid, nice, good kid, my parents tell me. And then I have mixed emotions and feelings because my mum and dad separated when I was 4. So then my mum's took me away from my father. We moved around various cities, various towns. And I feel like that impacted me a lot more than I thought it did because I no longer had my father figure there for me day in, day out, like I did obviously as a young child growing up. I think the biggest shift was when I was 8 years old, I moved to Sunderland. When I moved to Sunderland, I was called Charles, I had a posh accent. So you can imagine the struggles that I faced there. Sunderland was a rough, tough place to grow up, and I got bullied, more so by the older kids. That went on for a little bit until maybe I could no longer take it anymore. I fought back and then the bullying stopped. I've then started to get in maybe with the wrong crowd, started to get up to a bit of mischief, started to take school less seriously. And my last year of school, I had like 48% attendance, destined to fail all my exams. Teachers thought I wouldn't amount to anything. I was arrested over a stolen vehicle on a field and my first experience of being put in the cells. And to be honest, if I'd have kept in with them crowds, I would have ended up on that path and potentially maybe ended up in prison a lot sooner. I'd always wanted to follow in my father's footsteps. He was in the military, super proud man. I'd seen all his pictures, heard his stories about the adventures, and I'd always wanted the same. And more importantly for me, it was a way out of Sunderland, make my parents proud and do something with my life and achieve something. I actually told my mum I wanted to join the army, and she's the one that suggested the Royal Marines. I'd never heard of them before, didn't know anything about them. She just said that she remembers the time they came to Hong Kong, these super elite soldiers. She said they were well respected, and it was one of the hardest basic infantry training in the world to get into. So I was like, okay, that sounds like a good challenge. No sooner, I was down at Newcastle Careers office, and I remember walking into the office. You have the Marine there who's obviously to sell and recruit people. And he took me into this room, the old cassette video players, put that in, they come onto the TV, and I seen these soldiers, these Marines on boats, in planes, the jungle, the Arctic, the desert. And being that young kid, I was just sold. It was just seemed the ultimate sense of adventure. So from that day, I knew that's all I wanted to be, was a Marine.
How tough is it to become a Marine?
So I was 15 and 9 months when I went on my potential Royal Marines course. Basically, it's a 3-day course. You go down to Limston, you get thrashed, lectures, everything. And I remember you had to do a 3-mile run, and I didn't even know how far 3 miles was. And I just remember thinking, as long as I'm not at the back and I can keep up with the guys nearly at the front, I should be okay. Managed to scrape through that, past that. And the thing that stands out the most from there is after that 3 days, my mum and my grandma collected me from the train station, and I couldn't even walk down the stairs. My legs were so bad, honest, they were killing me. I'd never experienced fitness, pain, or intensity of sessions like it. And from there, you pass that course, you're then invited down to begin training. Obviously, it's so tough, challenging. I was fully out of my comfort zone, this young skinny kid from Sunderland, surrounded by all of these men going through this process. You're kind of bonded by a trauma, a shared suffering, and you experience something that's quite unique. And out of 56 people that joined training, only 11 of us made it to the end as originals. So I was the youngest recruit.
Tell me a little bit about your time in the Marines.
I joined at a time literally just before the terrorist attacks on 9/11, which then would shape the whole military trajectory throughout the Middle East and their operations over the next 2 decades. The first time that I came under fire was a clear, hot, sunny day down in Garmecia. Then all of a sudden, out of nowhere, an RPG exploded behind us, followed by a heavyweight of small arms fire. We've literally dropped for what cover we could. We were pinned down, we could hardly move. Sand was flying all around us. Now fear mixed with adrenaline kicks in. In that moment, you've obviously willed and wanted it for so long, and then when it happens, you're like, fuck, this is real life. One wrong move and you could be killed. But it's the mindset that helps you instinctively takes over, and then you do what you've been trained to do in order to maybe overcome that situation.
How long had you been in the Marines at the point that you decided that you would like to leave?
I was 23. After Afghanistan, I felt like I'd ticked all the boxes. Afghanistan is essentially what I joined up to do. I then was at a crossroads. Do I stay in, get keen, go down the special forces route like a lot of my friends did? Or do I leave and pursue a career in close protection? Now at that time, a lot of my friends were working in Iraq on the close protection gigs, getting paid a lot of money. I was on leave and I got a call from a boss that I used to work for. And he just said, Charlie, are you available to take Emma Watson to Bangladesh? And I didn't know who Emma Watson was. I'd never seen Harry Potter, but I agreed because if this company asks you to do a job, you do not want to say no because they're the best of the best. So I've agreed to it, didn't go back to Iraq. And then I went to Bangladesh with Emma Watson, which was crazy. That was at the height of the Harry Potter fame. Crowd mobbed. And I was like, wow, I was on my own. But that was a great time.
Tell me a bit about some of the clients and the people that you worked with during your time as a close protection officer.
Okay, so I'd say the close protection years are by far the most colourful years of my life to date. I spent 4 summers in the south of France with Elton John. I remember getting the contract for that and I couldn't believe it. I was over the moon. I flew out to Nice. First time I met Elton, I was taken to the house by one of the staff. Elton was just on his way to play tennis. He's seen me, he's come over, give me a hug. We've had a chat, had a conversation. He went about his tennis game, I went about my day. And then the summers there were great. It was amazing to see Elton behind closed doors as the normal person, dressing, getting on slippers, kind of Diet Coke, to then leaving the house and Elton the superstar. From one minute you can be sat in the villa in Nice, the next you're in a police escort, private jet, to a venue, you're on stage with Elton, he performs, does his thing, and then you're back, before you know it, you're back at the house, slippers on, chilling. And then I reached what I like to think of as the pinnacle of my close protection years. I now had a full-time client, a countess, based out of the Bahamas. That was incredible. We'd fly around the world on private jets, private island. Basically, they'd go on holiday. I'd fly out to the Caribbean or the Mediterranean, get on board their super yacht. We'd go island hopping, cruising, and myself and whoever I was with on the team, we'd just make sure they were safe, secure, and everything ran smoothly on their holiday.
And what impact do you think being in that environment around that kind of luxury lifestyle had on you as a person?
It's hard to say because I mean, I never really had much growing up. Although I didn't want for anything, we weren't rich. We didn't live this luxurious lifestyle. So to experience this world now with this type of clientele, I do think it was incredible. Like it impacted me because sometimes you'd come back to your normal life. You've just been on a super yacht, a private jet. The next thing you're back home and your reality doesn't seem as good. It kind of puts your life maybe a little bit boring. You try to then maybe live a little bit of that life. You'll go on nice holidays, you'll eat in nice places, you'll wear nice clothes. I then fell in love, got into another relationship, and my first bad decision that I say is I chose to leave that client. Now, I'd worked so hard to reach the top of my close protection game, have that client was such a unique gig to be in. I then decided to leave her and go to Ibiza and take a summer break. In my head, I was thinking, I'll spend a few months in Ibiza, I'll party, have a good time, and I'll go straight back to work. When we've landed, I've moved in with 2 tour managers of 2 of the island's most popular DJs. That's now given us access to the party scene, but everything else that comes with it. I've got swept along in that. I knew the decision I made to leave my client was wrong. It was eating me up inside. I started to take drugs. The more drugs I've started to take, the more I'm filled with shame, regret, and the more I'm getting them feelings, the more drugs I started to take to try and shut them out.
And what were the drugs that you were taking and how often were you taking them?
I was taking, say, ecstasy when I was out partying. And then by the end of the summer, I had a bad cocaine habit, which is, even saying that makes me so disgusted in myself that I could even end up in that situation. But that's the truth, that's where I was at that time. The wheels were buckling throughout the summer, and then by the end of the summer, the wheels were off, fully off. I was taking drugs, but hiding it. Nobody knew I was taking them every day. I was filled with all these emotions of regret and shame. Basically, I'd gone from my identity as a proud Royal Marine, served on these operations, to then proud identity purpose as a bodyguard, protecting the rich and famous, to now I've ended up somehow in Ibiza, I'm partying and I'm taking drugs. So I'd found a purpose that was a false sense of reality.
And how much were you taking a day? How much were you spending on your addiction at its height?
I was more or less getting them for free because I would get it for free and then give to people. So that was like the deal. I'd give bits out to people, then I'd have bits for free for myself. Whatever bits of money I had, I would just spend it on that. I took money out to Ibiza with me for my close protection, which I'd had quite a bit of money. When I got there, I just burnt through it all.
And what was the, I suppose, lowest or darkest moment that you can remember of that period where you were in active drug addiction?
I'd say there's a moment that stands out from that period. Everyone used to be dead proud. This is my mate Charlie, Elton John's bodyguard, things like that in Ibiza, who I lived with. The people would tell them stories or things I'd shared with them. And I just remember one time, I'm stood in a club and some guy said to his mate who's beside me, he's just turned and gone, quick, give me some money. I've got to give it to this drug dealer. And being called that in front of somebody destroyed me. And it made me turn to drugs even more. Like, I just wanted the world to swallow me up, thinking I'm being labelled a drug dealer. Like, all my things I've worked hard to achieve, and I'm now stood in a club taking drugs. Like, that was probably the lowest point that got me, that made me just turn to taking more. I thought after Ibiza, I'd come home, pick up work, stop taking the drugs, and then just go back to my old life. That was my way of thinking. But Ibiza has a dark side. There's a lot of criminality, a lot of burglaries, a lot of robbings throughout the season. At the end of the season, our apartment was burgled. We'd been to one of the closing parties, we'd came home, the whole place had been ransacked. Now what's crazy is I had a Rolex watch that I bought after my first summer with Elton John, I had my iPad that was bought from a client, I had my laptop. All the things I'd acquired through close protection years was taken, but all was left on the floor, scattered in these wash bags, was drugs.
Yeah, symbolic of your current situation, I guess.
Yeah, for sure. So that put a real cloud over leaving Ibiza. That was literally a week before I came home. I've then had to borrow money to get back from Ibiza. But I've now returned from Ibiza. I'm broken inside, mentally. I'm skint and I'm still taking drugs. I've been back from Ibiza a couple of weeks. I received a phone call, somebody that I knew previously, asking me to do a one-off driving detail. Basically, it was collect a shipment of drugs. Because my mindset was so far removed now from what it once was, I was just making one bad decision after another. Like I said, my perception was completely distorted. Charlie before Ibiza wouldn't have even tolerated that phone call. No one would even ask me. But because I was in a bit of a vulnerable situation, if you like, I was in a bit of debt. I didn't have any work at that time. I've agreed. I've gone through with the driving detail. Originally, I was told I would take a car to a location. Somebody would take the car from me. They would load up the suitcases with drugs. I wouldn't see, I wouldn't touch. I would then get the car and drive the car to London. On the day of the driving detail as such, it all changed. I had to hire a van, collect the drugs. As I pulled into the yard, I walked away from it. And the guy was like, well, mate, what are you doing? Come here. Like, he's literally got a forklift truck, picked up a pallet of drugs, drove it onto the back of the van and dropped it. And I stood there thinking, fuck. Pallet of drugs put into the van. I've drove off. I've rang the person who was involved, said, mate, what am I supposed to do with this? He told me to break it down, separate the drugs into the two cases, which was supposed to have already been done. I didn't have anything on me to break it down. I've gone through with it anyway, separated the drugs, and then I was told to wait. I've waited for a bit, then I was told, right, you've got to go to London now. Myself and my girlfriend, we were in the car. As we've set off, I knew there was police in and around us. I seen the cars. I seen a guy sat in the hotel lobby as I was on my way out, and I just knew. And then when I seen them blue lights in my rearview mirror, my stomach just went, and I just knew it was over. All of the warning signs telling me not to go through this drive, I was shutting them off. I knew it was wrong, but I was thinking with a different mind. I was blurred, my perception was gone. So I was just going through with it. I've ended up walking into a surveillance operation. I was arrested. I had 35 kilos of MDMA in the boot of the car. That one mistake would obviously change my life forever.
And how much money were you told you would get for taking part in this drug run?
So I was getting paid £2,000, which is embarrassing to even think I would do something of this scale and this magnitude for £2,000. However, I'd borrowed £2,000 to come back from Ibiza and to pay my bills. So to me, in my head, I'd do the drive, that would cancel out that, and then I'd be back on the clear footing, get my head straight, go back to work.
And why did the media pick up your story? What was it about your case that got into the headlines, do you think?
I think with them, it painted maybe a good deterrent. Ibiza drug couple was painted across the papers, showed a young couple partying on the island of Ibiza. They tried to say our case was linked to Ibiza. It had nothing to do with Ibiza. We were just there before it happened. But they kind of used that, I suppose, because so many young people get caught up on the wrong path. So many young people take drugs without realizing the severity of their actions or the consequences. And they might think it's okay to do a drug run or a drug drive, and my friend's done it, we won't get caught. But the one time you do get caught, it can be life-changing, like it was for myself and my ex. It was hard to see, and it's still hard to talk about now because it doesn't feel real to think that I made that decision and I'm in the papers with my mugshots with suitcase full of drugs. That's not what I really wanted people to see, to think, or to judge me as. So when I was first arrested, we were thrown into the cells. The hardest thing was having my girlfriend there. She'd never been in trouble with the police before. You're not just going through this on your own now, you're going through it together. Into the cells was horrendous. It was an awful experience. You get given a phone call. I phoned my dad because he's the one person I've always turned to, especially in an emergency situation. I've called my dad and I said, Dad, I'm in the police station, I'm in trouble, I need help. Well, my dad put the phone down, hung up on me. I'm stood there with the dial tone and I've had to go back to my cell, head in my hands. I knew how much I've let him down in that moment. Both of our worlds were crushed. We're now about to embark on this new path of pain, misery, suffering. We were taken to the courts on the Friday. All of that is a bit of a blur. But what I remember so vividly, we were both stood up and the judge said, we remand you both into custody. Both. No one expected my ex to get remanded. She's collapsed in a heap of tears. We're both in tears, we're hugging each other. We're then being pulled apart, we're separated, and then we're sent our separate ways.
And what was your prison sentence, Charlie?
So I received 10 years. It means I'd have to do 5 years inside and then 5 years on licence out in the community. But I remember when I arrived in Winson Green, Birmingham, by far the worst prison I ever went to. Dark, toxic, volatile. I was stressed, depressed. When you go into jail, it doesn't matter whether I was Charlie the Royal Marine, Charlie the bodyguard. I'm literally now Charlie, the prisoner. I'm given a number and I just become part of the system. Nothing what I've done in life before this matters. I was given these grey joggers that were too big. I had a red maroon jumper that was too small. And they let me keep my black slip-on shoes. So picture that. Talk about a fall from grace. I'm there in this outfit with slip-on shoes, through onto the induction wing. When you go into your cell, you get offered a smoker's pack or a biscuit pack. Now, I didn't smoke and I chose the smoker's pack. And I remember going in stressed, trying to roll these roll-ups that was just not happening. They were horrendously awful. And I was trying to smoke. The 3.5 months I was on remand in Birmingham, I smoked that many roll-ups, the ends of my fingertips were brown. That was the most unhealthiest I've ever been. Wasn't exercising. The food in there was awful. Bang up all the time. That means in your cell behind the door, not really getting out much. That is the lowest point I've ever reached in my life to this date.
Were you able to speak to your father again?
So that's a funny story. So once I was in, you're allowed another phone call. And I didn't have any numbers at this stage because I didn't have my phone with me or anything. No police there to give me my numbers. So I couldn't phone my dad. And I phoned Magnum White Line, which is a taxi rank not far from my dad's house. I just remember the number, 7 and all the 6s. They've answered the phone. I begged, I pleaded. Please, can you go to this address? And can you ask my dad to send me some writing paper, envelopes, some stamps, a postal order, and please come see me. That was the hardest call I think I've ever had to make. Now, when I've gone off the phone, I never knew if that message actually got through or whether he'd even entertain it. But I remember a few days later, I'm lying on my bed and the stuff I asked for slid under my door. I knew he got the message, and a few days after that, he came to see me. So as mad as he was the first time, once that sunk in, He was there for me every single day since, as my father, as my rock.
And so you spent 5 years in prison. What did you learn about yourself during that time?
When I was inside, I knew I couldn't go back to my old life of close protection. I knew I'd have to start all over again. What prison does, especially for 5 years, it completely strips you back of everything. You've got no identity in there, no purpose as such. You have to rebuild it from the bottom up. For me, that was great because if I'd have tried to go into the life I'm living now from close protection, I might have struggled. I might have still been chasing the adrenaline or the highs that maybe I was searching for after the military and the tours like Afghanistan and things. But it completely grounded me. Then I knew I'm going to have to find a new path when I get out. So I've decided then to pursue fitness, turn my passion for exercise, for fitness, helping others into my new purpose. So I was released, I was 34, I had £40 to my name, having to rebuild my life all over again from scratch. I came out with fear of failure. Everybody, again, maybe didn't think I would amount to anything coming out. The hardest thing was coming out being labelled a drug dealer, and the papers printed a lot of bad press, a lot of negativity. My reputation was completely tarnished, but I knew that I could come back from this mistake. And we all make mistakes in life. We all experience the challenges and setbacks and failures. I would not let this mistake define who I was as a person. I know what I've done was wrong. I lived and breathed it more than anybody, but I'll own that mistake and I'll accept it. The main reason why I share my story, as hard as it is talking about drugs and having to say, open that box every time, because even speaking about this today, I'll get judged from being a Royal Marine that took drugs that went to prison. That's always going to happen. However, it happens more than we think. And there's a lot of soldiers that do turn to drugs and end up in difficult situations. If I can share my story to show people that it doesn't always have to be the way when you make a mistake, that's life over for good, how we come back from them, that will truly define us.
Yeah, I heard you say that a lot of the time people are judged by the worst moment of their lives.
I'd gone to Ibiza, took drugs, was put into prison. That's what people will remember. That's what people will think of first. So it was so hard to try and shake away that stigma and that reputation. And when I was released, I had that fear and that dread of, if I go for a job, it's the elephant in the room, or I'm always constantly having to justify who I am as a person. Like, I knew I was a good person, I just made a bad decision. And when you come out, it is hard because the mistake follows you.
What is your purpose now, Charlie?
So my purpose now, which is the best purpose of them all, is I've recently become a father. And just holding him, after everything I've been through, feeling that love like no other, is the best purpose I could ever imagine.
What's your relationship like with your son?
The best it could be. I can't put him down. He's going to get sick of me. Get off me. One thing I'm going to make sure that I'm always there, as long as I can be. I lost my father at such a young age, moving away, and it was hard not having him around. So I want to make sure that I'm always there for him. I'm always around, and yeah, just be there to support him.
We had a really bad week at Scrubs where we found 3 men hanging in the same week. I remember walking past his cell and just having a feeling that maybe I should look in. And I could just see his legs dangling.